I never planned to fall in love with a town that goes to sleep before 8 p.m. In fact, the first time I arrived, I thought something was seriously wrong. My tricycle driver kept saying, "Ma'am, relax. This is a peaceful town." But as we drove deeper past rice fields, wooden houses, and kids playing barefoot on the road, I realized peaceful was an understatement. It was almost silent. No honking, no karaoke, no vendors shouting promos on the street. Just the soft rattle of the tricycle and the sound of crickets welcoming me like I was moving into a forest. For months, I'd been traveling across the Philippines, usually chasing the big cities or famous beaches, the kind with nightlife that lasts until sunrise. But this time, I wanted something different. I wanted to disappear into a place where time slowed down enough for me to hear my own thoughts. I just didn't know that meant ending up in a coastal town so slow, so quiet, so simple, that I felt like I'd stepped into a different decade. The moment I checked into a tiny homestay owned by a woman named Aling Teresa, she smiled at me the way grandmothers smile at their favorite grandchildren. "You came here to rest," she told me, as if she already knew everything going on in my life. "This town? It gives people their peace back." I didn't tell her she was right, but she was. The first morning I woke up naturally at 5:30 a.m. because the entire town wakes up then. Not from alarm clocks, but from roosters, the sound of sweeping, and the smell of garlic frying in every kitchen. I'm not a morning person. I usually need 2 coffees and 5 motivational speeches from myself. But that day I opened my window and saw a sky painted in soft orange. Fishermen were returning from the sea. Women with baskets walked to the market. Kids splashed water on each other near the pump well. Nobody was stressed. Nobody was rushing. I touched my chest and asked myself, am I still alive? Did I walk into a movie set? After breakfast, I wandered around the town. There were no malls. Not even a mini mall. Just one sorry store every 10 steps, each with a friendly owner who insisted I try their homemade snacks. There were no bars either. When I asked a local teenager where people hang out at night, he pointed seriously to a bench under a tree. "That's the spot," he said proudly. "Sometimes someone brings a guitar." I asked if they drink beer there. He shook his head. "No, ma'am, that's for older people. We just talk." And sometimes sing. I felt like I had teleported into a wholesome version of life that I didn't even know existed anymore. Around lunchtime, I followed the smell of grilled fish to a small eatery. There was only one item on the menu, whatever the fisherman caught that morning. When I ordered, the owner looked at me and said, "We don't have Wi-Fi." I laughed because he said it as if I needed to emotionally prepare for it. I took a bite of the fish and nearly cried. It tasted like it had never experienced stress or plastic pollution in its entire life. While I was eating, a group of locals gathered around me, more like curious cats than anything else. They asked me everything: where I was from, why I was traveling alone, if America really has snow everywhere, and if it's true that Americans don't eat rice every day. When I said yes, we don't, their mouths dropped like I'd just committed a crime. One woman whispered loudly to her friend, "No rice every day? How do they stay alive?" I laughed so hard I almost choked. That afternoon, I walked to the beach. And by beach, I mean a long stretch of untouched shoreline with no resorts, no loud tourists, no vendors selling sarongs. Just calm water and the sound of waves. I sat there watching the fishermen mend their nets and realized that in this town, nothing is complicated. People don't race against deadlines. They race against the sunset so they can get home before dark. Speaking of dark, this is where I discovered just how quiet nighttime is here. At 7:30 p.m., I walked outside hoping to find food or a cafe. The town looked like someone pressed the power off button. Lights dimmed one by one. Tricycles stopped running. Shops were closed. Kids were already inside. I heard someone locking their door like it was midnight. By 8 p.m., the entire town was asleep. And there I was, the only tourist walking around with a flashlight like I was hunting ghosts. The only sound was geckos making that funny tokay noise. I just stood there stunned and then burst out laughing. I came from a country where you can buy sushi at 1 a.m., and here I was in a town that believed staying awake past 8 p.m. was a foolish life choice. I went back to my room, opened my window, and just listened. Nothing, not even music. That silence hugged me like a warm blanket. I didn't know silence could feel like that. The next morning, I joined the locals at the market. Everything was alive, fresh vegetables, freshly caught fish, and freshly updated gossip from aunties who take it more seriously than national news. They asked me if I slept well. When I said yes, they told me it was because the town was calm. No problems here, one old man said. Just simple life. He wasn't lying. For the next few days, I did what the locals do. I woke up with the sun, ate whatever was caught or harvested that day, walked to the same bench under the tree where people gathered to talk about weather dogs and whose mango tree was growing best. I listened to old fishermen tell stories about storms they survived, and teenagers talk about dreams of going to college in the next town. I watched families share meals without phones. I watched kids invent games with rocks and sticks. The simplicity, it pulled something out of me. One afternoon, I sat by the beach again, watching the sky turn pink. A grandmother sat beside me and asked, "You look peaceful." Why? How do you explain that you're used to a life filled with noise, speed, pressure, and notifications? That you're so used to moving fast, you forgot what it feels like to just breathe. So I told her the truth. This town is giving me something I didn't know I needed. She nodded. People who come here. They always say that. Peace is our treasure. We may not have malls or bars or fancy things, but we have peace. And for the first time in years, I wasn't tired. I wasn't stressed. I was just existing, and that was enough. On my last night, something magical happened. I walked outside expecting the same quiet darkness, but instead I heard faint guitar music. I followed the sound and found a small group of locals sitting around that famous bench under the tree. They waved at me. "Join us." So I did. They handed me a cup of hot ginger tea. Someone played soft music. Someone else sang with a voice that sounded like it came from the ocean itself. Nobody was shouting. Nobody was trying to be cool. They were simply enjoying each other's presence. It was the calmest, safest, most peaceful nightlife I had ever experienced. One of the guys asked me, "Ma'am, don't you miss bars? Or parties?" I shook my head immediately. Honestly, no, and I meant it. When I finally went back to my room, I lay there in the quiet darkness and felt grateful. I came to this town expecting to be bored. Instead, I found a version of life that healed me. I found people who welcomed me without conditions. I found sunsets that made my heart slow down. I found meaning in simplicity, charm in silence, and joy in nothing but the sound of waves and laughter under a tree. The next morning when I checked out, Al and Teresa hugged me tightly. "You will come back," she said confidently. Everyone comes back, and I knew she was right. On the tricycle ride leaving town, I watched the quiet houses and the waving children fade behind me. Something inside me ached, not a sad ache, but the kind that tells you something changed inside you forever. The world may chase nightlife, noise, malls, and chaos. But somewhere in the Philippines, on a quiet coast with no bars and no malls, a small town taught me the most important lesson. Sometimes the best nights are the quiet ones. And sometimes the places without nightlife give you the kind of life you didn't know you were missing. Thank you so much for watching this journey with me. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more adventures. See you in the next one.